There are some tips out there that are so invaluable in helping you create projects that are going to look amazing. These little tips and tricks are going to take your crafting projects to the next level because these little details may not seem like much, but when put into your final card project, they make your project look outstanding. One of the things that I cannot live without is a bone folder, and this is the Teflon bone folder. There's a difference between Teflon bone folders and any other types of bone folders out on the market, and I'm going to show you why. Now, with any bone folder, you can of course do scoring and they help you crease your paper, but a Teflon bone folder does these things so much better. So I'm going to go ahead and use this bone folder and use the flat end to crease my paper. This is so much more effective than a standard bone folder because you get not only these beautiful crisp lines, but there is absolutely no sheen left behind from the bone folder rubbing against the paper. Now at this point you might be wondering, what am I talking about? What sheen? Let me show you. I'm taking another piece of paper here. This is another dark color so you can see this really easily. And this is just a standard bone folder. It was one that came with one of my scoring boards. After I've scored this paper, you'll notice that the gray cardstock has a sheen on it, which is from the bone folder rubbing against the paper. The blue paper is what we used with the Teflon bone folder, and that did not create a sheen. So using a Teflon bone folder, you can take your scoring to the next level. That tip alone is so invaluable and makes such a difference on a finished card. Next up is stamping. All of us have these acrylic blocks in our stash, and they're great for stamping. But if you notice, when you stamp with an acrylic block, you don't always get a perfect impression. And believe it or not, that black stamping is not a true crisp black. Let me show you in my stamping tool. A stamping tool is going to give you the ability to restamp over and over again, giving you perfectly stamped images and perfectly crisp images with whatever color you're using, whether it's black or a bright happy color. No matter what color you're stamping with, the stamping is going to be so much more vibrant and finished off. Take a look. On the left, we have the stamping done with an acrylic block. See how it's not as smooth and as deeply rich as the one on the right that was done with our stamping tool? That alone makes such a difference when stamping on a card. Now sometimes when you're coloring, we go outside the lines. And I don't know about you, but that always bugs me. Using just this simple sand eraser, you can rub away any coloring that's outside of the lines, whether it's an ink smudge or maybe some watercolor like here where I was coloring and ended up going outside the lines a little bit. The sand eraser basically sands the paper away just gently enough to take away that color on the surface. So a sand eraser is such an invaluable tool for helping clean up those little mistakes that we might end up with on our projects. Now, ink blending is such a fun technique, and I know it is so popular right now, everybody is doing it, but if you've noticed, sometimes when you're doing some ink blending, you have to touch the paper to finish off the rest of the panel. But fingerprints create such a mess of your project. You're stuck ending up having to try to cover over that little fingerprint that got left behind, but of course you got to touch another part of the paper to hold it down. While using just a piece of Post-it tape wrapped around your fingers gives you a handle to hold on to, but at the same time keeps your fingerprints from making a mess of your gorgeous blending. Alright, so the last tip I want to share with you is embossing. If you have ever tried to emboss and end up getting some flakes of embossing powder in places you did not want it, there's a reason for that, and that is usually from oils from your fingers, but other things can also contribute to embossing powder sticking to other areas of your paper. But you can eliminate that by using a powder tool. A powder tool or powder bag is going to neutralize any static on the paper. So on the bottom half of this paper, I have applied some powder. On the top half, I have not, and I'm stamping both of these sentiments with embossing ink onto some blue cardstock. So like I said, on the bottom, I have the powder. On the top, I do not. I'm going to pull this out of my MISTI and I'm going to apply the embossing powder over top. Down along the bottom, you can see we have a beautifully stamped sentiment that's going to emboss perfectly. But look at how, when I apply the powder, we've got stray pieces of embossing powder sticking to all sorts of different areas, and that's going to create a mess of our embossing. So by having the powder tool, you get a perfectly stamped image that will emboss beautifully and look amazing on your card. All of these little tips are things that are so simple, but they make such a big difference when you put them all together in your project, and they end up creating outstanding results on your cards, making your cards look that much more beautiful. I hope that you've learned something from these tips that I've shared today, and I hope you'll give them a go on all of your upcoming crafting projects. Thanks for tuning in today. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more inspiration and quick tips, and I hope you have a wonderful day.